Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Mr. Ducharme with you. Today's lesson is 2.1, Elements, Compounds, and Mixtures. Today we'll be learning how to create shape models to represent elements, compounds, and mixtures. This content is going to be really important as we get later in this week and we start talking about chemical formulas and using models to represent them. So today we want to teach you the basics about how to use our computer's technology, learning from what we did last week with actually making shapes in our Google Docs. Remember, make sure you have taken last week, week one's materials, and completed all of the mastery checks. I also want to plug strongly, shout out to everyone who checked in with their teachers, who are using that science block from 1 to 150 is a great time to get support and get their questions answered. Okay, let's dive in. Before we do, I wanted to give a quick science joke of the day. As corny as they are in these difficult times, I thought it'd be fun to lighten things up a little bit. So, today's joke. What do chemists' dogs do with their bones? Couple of rules. Number one, no Googling. Looking at you, Tegra. Number two, make sure you email your answer to ben.ducharme@scienceandtech.org. I'll shoot you a little something. All right, let's get started on today's lesson. First up, you should have already completed the do now and the beginning of the engage section. If you are stuck on the engage section, I do want to just give you a quick plug. What I ask you to do is to look at these different pictures, A through G, and to try to sort them into 3 different groups. There's no correct answer here. It's all about how you think you sorted them. So for example, you could have said, I put A and E together in group 1 because all of the shapes in each of these is only one color. All of A is only red and all of E is only blue. So I put those together in group number 1. Remember, no right or wrong way to do this. This is a thinking exercise to get you analyzing these models critically. All right, let's move ahead into our guided notes. So today we're going to be learning 3 new vocabulary words. The first word is a word you've heard before. It's element. An element is a specific type of atom. And any type of atom has one specific number of protons. So for example, this model might represent carbon atoms. Okay? Carbon atoms always have 6 protons. We'll learn more about that later in this unit, but I want you to know for now that an element is only made up of one type of atom. So for example, in this picture, these blue circles, one blue circle might represent one carbon atom. So in this model of an element, we have lots of carbon atoms. Okay. As a check for understanding, I want us to go back and look at the pictures from our engage section and try to identify which of those actually represent an element. So let's look back quickly. Take a moment and look through each box, A through G, and decide yourself which of those represent an element. If you identified A as an element, you'd be correct. All of the circles in this model are the exact same. They're red circles. So for example, that might represent hydrogen. One type of element, they're all the same, so this would represent an element. There is also another model that represents an element. Try to find the other one. If you successfully identified E as an element, it is also an element. The reason for that is every single circle in here is the same exact one. So like I said before, if we said blue circles represented carbon, these are all carbon atoms. Wait, but Mr. Ducharme, there's 2 of them stuck together. Shouldn't that make it something else? It's still considered an element. And some elements actually in nature are always found stuck together. For example, oxygen. Oxygen is always found as 2 oxygen atoms that actually stuck together. But as long as they're all identical, that means it is a pure substance, also known as an element. So here for our check for understanding, we should say A and E represented an element. Second definition is a compound. A compound is atoms of 2 or more different elements bonded, which means attached physically together. An easy way to identify if a model represents a compound is to look at each cluster. So for example, over here, we have one shaded in blue circle attached to 2 unshaded in blue circles. Now notice each of these clusters have the exact same composition. They all have one shaded in blue circle attached to two unshaded in blue circles. So this is a compound. There's two or more elements, the shaded in blue circles attached to the non-shaded in circles, and all of the compounds, all of these clusters are exactly the same. They are identical. Okay, when you're ready, let's go ahead and look back to see which of our models from our ENGAGE actually represent a compound. Take a moment and look at all the pictures and try to find which represents just a compound. Remember, it should be two or more different atoms attached or bonded together, and each of the clusters needs to be identical. There are two correct answers. The first is C. Notice in C, we have one blue circle attached to two red circles, and each of the four clusters have that exact same configuration. So C is a compound. The other one that's a compound is D. D is made up of one blue circle and one red circle bonded to each other, and all of them are identical to each other, therefore it is a compound. Let's go ahead and add that back in. C and D. Our last definition is a mixture. A mixture is different substances in the same place, but they're not all bonded or attached to each other. So this means there's some elements or some compounds all in the same place, but each of the clusters is not identical. In our model over here, we have blue circles and red triangles. So each of these represent two different elements. Notice they're not touching, which means they're not chemically bonded into a compound, and they're all in the same place. So this is a mixture of two different types of elements. Once again, let's go ahead and look back at the last page when you're ready. If you need some extra time with notes, hit pause and then catch up with us. A mixture is made up of two or more different substances. Okay, so try to find the models that represent a mixture. The first that we can see that's a mixture is B. B has one compound here with one blue circle and two red circles, but then there's a second element, these two blue circles attached to each other, and they're all mixed in here together. So those are two things mixed together, therefore it's a mixture. F is also a mixture. It has blue circles and red circles mixed together. And finally, G is a mixture. G actually has three things going on. These blue and red circle compounds, these red elements by themselves, and these two blue elements stuck together. So that is a mixture as well. So B, F, and G are all mixtures. Let's go ahead and dive into guided practice. Once again, if you need extra time, hit pause and then catch up with us. All right. So here it's telling us follow along the video and answer each of the questions below. Number 1, determine if each model represents an element, compound, or mixture. Then explain what you saw that told you the answer. So for this first one, let's take a moment and look at the model. Notice we have a red circle and a blue circle attached, and it looks like all four of those are the same. So go ahead and take a moment and type in your answer. The correct answer is a compound. How'd I know? Well, I knew because all four are identical clusters made up of two or more different types of atoms. In this case, we have two different types of atoms. We have the red circle and the blue circle, and all four clusters are identical. In your own words, type that into the how do you know box. The second one, take a moment and answer. We have four red circles, and they're not attached to each other. This one is an element. Well, how do we know? Well, we knew that elements are made up of only one type of atom. We only have one type of atom, red circles. There's nothing else mixed in, so it must be an element. Once again, take a moment and type in your how do you know sentence. Pause if you need some extra time. The third one, we have red circles, but there's also yellow circles attached to blue circles. So we have a compound and separate elements. Therefore, we have a mixture. Finish up your how do you know sentence. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to what this looks like in a little bit harder of a version. So in this guided practice, okay, we're going to actually need to use the key over here on the right to create our own model. In this case, we're creating a model for a compound made with 1 sulfur atom and 2 hydrogen atoms. So we're going to have to practice using the drawing skills we learned last week. As a quick refresher, the way to insert new images into your Google Doc is click on Insert, go to Drawing, New, and then you're going to make sure you choose this symbol that says Shape, okay? And you're going to choose the shape. So for example, if I want to draw a circle as a symbol, I can draw a circle into this drawing space. Don't forget to change the fill depending on what the key says. So maybe you want a filled in circle, and then save and close, and then it'll show up. Now my cursor was all the way back up at the top, which is annoying. Try to make sure your cursor is in the space you want it. Otherwise you're gonna have to drag it back down to where you want it, which is quite annoying. Okay, see you guided practice. Here we go. Okay, so this one said 1 sulfur atom with 2 hydrogen atoms. Okay, so sulfur in our key is a box or a square unshaded in, and hydrogen is a circle unshaded in. So let's start by making our sulfur atom. So I'm going to delete that guy. I'm going to go up to Insert, Drawing, New. I said I wanted sulfur, which in my key was a square that was not shaded in. So I'm going to go ahead and make a square, and then I'm going to change my fill to being transparent, and hit save and close. Now this one is here. Remember I said click the wrap text. That'll help you move it around easier. So let's go ahead and put that in the middle of our space. And then I need 2 hydrogen atoms. 2 hydrogen atoms. So there's 2 ways to do this. The first is to just create a new drawing. We need a circle, and we need it to be not shaded in for our hydrogen based upon our key. So now I have my hydrogen. I'm going to switch it to wrap text. So at this point, I'm going to make sure they're connected to each other. Remember, these are 1 compound, so I want to make sure that they're touching. Now I need a second hydrogen atom. I can either go back and draw a new one, or I can click on it, hit Control-C and Control-V, copy and paste, and then I get a second one. And I can just drag it over and attach it. That's going to speed up your life a little bit. Okay, that was a lot very quickly. If you need to pause and catch up, do so. And then we're going to move on to question number 3. You're going to use the same key to create a model for a mixture of sulfur atoms and hydrogen atoms. Be careful here, it's a mixture, not a compound. I'm going to pause my video. You should pause my video as well. Go ahead and get your answer down, and then check your answer when you're ready. Okay, at this point you should have finished question 3. So it's a mixture of sulfur and hydrogen atoms. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste a number of different circles and squares that are not shaded in. I'm going to make sure that they're not touching each other. And I'm going to kind of space them out around this whole space here to represent this is a mixture made up of different sulfur and hydrogen atoms. Remember, we don't connect them together because they're not 1 compound. Okay, last part of guided practice. Ask us, what is the difference between atoms represented by different shapes? The difference is that different atoms are made of different elements. Different elements always have a different number of protons. That's a key idea that we'll come back to again next week. Okay, we're going to move ahead to the check for understanding. Go ahead and pause your video. I want you to complete the whole thing and then check your answers. At this point, you should have all of your answers done for your check for understanding. Okay, first one is a mixture. I know this because there's individual dark atoms, but there are also 2 white circles connected as well, so it's a mixture. The second one is an element. I know this because all of the particles are 1 type of atom. They're all red circles. Okay, down below, you should have drawn a picture that looks similar to mine. Should be a shaded in triangle attached to 3 unshaded in circles. Doesn't matter the orientation, but they should look something like this. Okay, at this point, you're ready to move on to independent practice and your mastery check. Once again, if you need help, please make sure you're checking with your teacher during that science block. Good luck and have a good day.